I was so afraid to delegate for the first year and a half that I was in real estate. I think that there's so much value in focusing on what you do.
I mean, you have to hustle. You have to fight.
Hey guys, Nicole Spinoza with the Short Sale Queen, and me and Stephanie Parks have two special guests with us today, Michael Scanlon and Carlos Aparicio. And I am so excited to be able to talk to you guys. You guys came all the way from Chicago.
From the cold to the warm. I like it.
And they're very excited that Texas was a little bit warmer. And we're actually 70 degrees.
Yeah.
So it's a good change of pace for us too.
It's a good day. It's not crazy
It's beautiful.
hot or
40 degrees is beautiful.
So really quick, so why don't you guys introduce yourself a little bit, just say who you are, who you're with, and then we can jump right into it.
So I'm Michael Scanlon. I am a realtor also with EXP, work at the same company. So that's, one of the ways that we ended up meeting and, run a team up in Chicago.
Carlos Aparicio. I'm an attorney, also an investor. Done a few flips from the Chicagoland area. So I have my own law practice in Chicago.
Awesome. Well, and it's funny because you just said investor. And so that probably is why we get along really well. Because before offline, we were talking about attorneys. And so he's one of the good one guys. So I know I say a lot of things on my channel about attorneys.
There's not many.
There's not many with that common sense aspect that we were talking about. Anyways, so we work with Michael. We've been working together for 3 years?
Gosh, almost 4 years now. We started early 2020.
Right. How's that been going? Because I know you're working with the short sales with us. So can you tell us a little bit about your experience with working with us?
Yeah, no, it's been awesome. Honestly, when I did my first deal, I had no idea what was going on. I hadn't really done short sales before. I had done, I think, one, and I self-negotiated, and I really didn't even know what I was doing then. So then when I started working with your team, the experience, obviously, was phenomenal because you guys handle all of the negotiation, most of the paperwork. There was basically just a need for me to list the properties for you guys. And so it became a very easy prospectus to, get you guys what you needed and get it very quickly because I knew that what I needed to do compared to what I normally do on a transaction was so limited that what you asked of me was very, very doable because the rest of the transaction was handled by you guys. So it's really been a great experience. And now we're at a point where
it just runs so smoothly.
Yeah. You guys just send me stuff without even asking. And I just say yes, no matter what. And it's been a really good relationship.
Michael, he came through our program, I guess it's been almost 4 years ago. And he is now one of our top agents that we send leads to, like short sale leads or leads that need to be listed.
The girls will literally not let us send it to anyone else.
We cannot send it to anybody else in Illinois, like Michael Scanlon, he's our guy. And even in Indiana, he's also licensed there. But we appreciate a good agent that just gets stuff done. It doesn't overcomplicate.
I think it's so important to really focus on the relationship aspect. Because of that, you've gotten so much business from us and how people don't understand how important that is. Forget about the transactions. Real estate is just relationships. And then all the details. Yeah. And you would know that because you built your business on that.
Yeah. So my background was before going on my own law practice was in politics in Illinois, which is really, really messy.
Politics.
And so I worked for a few governors and I worked for the city, the county, third largest county in the United States, obviously third largest city of Chicago, and the state of Illinois. And so I really found that relationships that networking is really what drives people, right? There's a self-interest to everybody, but it's also what drives individuals. And so as long as you have a good relationship, you come out, you don't overcompensate or overpromise, and you're yourself, and you build it on relationships, people are going to rely on you. And so that's how I started in real estate. I had the fortune of knowing Michael before real estate, just very, very short time in college. And, when I saw him become a broker, I'm like, hey, let's hook up, and it was just a simple message. I'm like, hey, we did a little bit of rugby. We, knew you in college, let's hook up. And we did. And obviously that's turned into a great relationship and a great friendship as well. Mm-hmm. But I learned that from politics and brought that over to my business aspect. And I think that's been very helpful with bridging relationships with other attorneys, because Illinois is an attorney state. And, you know, sometimes some attorneys will be a stone wall, and you have to know how to move that or how to navigate it, how to massage it. And, you know, I mean, and so I think that's been a key part onto why my office has been successful.
So Carlos is our, you know, attorney that closes all of our deals in Illinois. And so we bombard him all the time. He gets to deal with us, like trying to push to close once we get short sale approval. But your office has been wonderful. The only thing I have to say about Illinois is that, so the first time I ever did a deal in Illinois, when we went nationwide, I was shocked at the title insurance fee was so high, and like other fees are so high. So, you know, we had to navigate that.
I swear, I thought you were going to talk about the water bill again. I was like, here we go. She's going to talk about.
Oh, well, you have to pay the water bills too.
Yes.
Because it's just so different, you know, navigating when we expanded nationwide, because we were kind of talking about that at lunch about how every state is so different. And then even more so how important the relationships were, because we can't expand without having all of the details. And people think just the transactions alone is like, oh, it's so simple. You have an opportunity, but that opportunity can cost you so much if you don't have all of those people in place. We learned that the hard way when we expanded.
Yeah. You know, title fees are interesting, right? Especially in the state of Illinois. They're necessary. I tell everybody, people come to me, can we close without a title company? Absolutely not. I'm not going to insure you. 100 years ago, attorneys just write a letter of opinion and insurance, and that's how title industries were probably created, because somebody was eventually going to come back and make a claim. And attorneys we don't have a bag of money sitting there. At least not all attorneys. And you know, just
She's
sitting
like,
there
disclaimer,
waiting.
I do not.
Right, just waiting to like pay out. Like, oh, you got a claim? Here's a cookie. But yeah, I mean, so that's interesting, because prior to working and partnering through Michael and with the short sale queens, I negotiated short sales on my own, and it's just a lot of time and expense, and then dealing with a lot of different banks and knowing, you know, who knows what, you know, and people are always astounded by the title fees. I mean, and it is. I mean, but, you know, they're necessary, they're required. The thing I love about you guys is when I first started working and I saw your upfront, like, I don't know if I get to, like, the addendums and the disclosures. I think that was amazing, because it's there. It's black and white.
Yep.
People understand, buyers understand, and then attorneys in Illinois would come back and say, no. And I'm like, look at the addendum. It's there.
Right.
You know,
we always try to be proactive instead of reactive on the stuff we're working
and I
on.
love that. I love that. And I used to do my own stuff before, and then I'm like, I don't do short sales anymore. Other than yours, I'm like, you know, happy to be there, be a team player, and play my part in the role of getting it to close.
So I really want to get down to a couple different things. So you have an incredible team. We were talking about that, 20-ish people, 25, 26, I don't know, whatever. I don't think you know either, but it's okay. You have a lot, that's a lot of human beings. So a lot of moving parts. And then you, of course, have built an incredible team, you know, at such a high volume, like you're both doing high volume. So I'd love to hear from you both on what, maybe even like the challenges or the things that you're seeing that you're like, wow, working with so many agents, this is what I'm seeing them overcomplicate. This is what they're doing wrong, because obviously you're doing something right. You said you're the number one team in your area, correct?
Yeah, so we're the number one team in Chicago for EXP, and we're the number one multifamily team in the state of Illinois for all brokerages. You know, there's a lot of different answers that go there. You know, we get a good amount of volume from you guys, which is great. So that helps with being the number one team. You know, the multifamily, that comes with the fact that a lot of us are investors, and I'm an investor as well. I've got, 22 units at this point. And so, I can speak the language. I can talk to the clients very much so, and, built a lot of relationships. But, when it comes to, what people are doing wrong, what they're overcomplicating, I think there's a lot of lack of confidence on the agents on my team. Even when I first started, I just said, I know what I'm doing. I basically just went at every transaction.
Because you were willing to figure it out.
Yeah. And if I didn't know answers, I would ask Carlos.
The best advice I ever got as a young lawyer was fake it till you make it. And this guy was in there for like 20 years, and I was so confident in a conference room table, and all of a sudden I'd walk out and I'm like, wow. And he's like, yeah, I wasn't sure, but I'm like, yeah.
Okay, but there really is something to that. Can we talk about that for a second? Because that was me, but there's definitely two different versions, right? There's the confidence of fake it till you make it, not to be fake, but just like, I'm confident because if I don't know, I'll figure it out. And then there's that fake it till you make it with social media where people are literally just faking it. And they're spending all their time and energy faking it and trying to keep this facade than actually figuring it out.
Yes.
So there's definitely a huge difference because I
we
think
had that conversation on that car, Mike, where there's people like, you know, whether it's like material things or whatever, or I just closed this or I just that, and you're just walking by houses, or I'm selling this house and you just walked into a open house and maybe got permission to record something.
We've seen that before.
Yeah. And it's just, and then you know that, you know, you look at their numbers because you can look at agents' numbers and you're like, that's
like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, it's not matching.
Yeah. You don't even own that. What are you talking about? I think a part of it is having the audacity.
Yeah.
Right. And so like what you're talking about, it's like a good agent or a good entrepreneur is like having the audacity to just do it and figure it out.
Yeah. And there are agents on my team that will come to me, and I tell them all the time, like, just ask me. If you're out with a client and they ask you something and you're not sure, shoot me a quick text and just let me know. But so many of the agents that, you know, I've either worked with on or off the team, the barrier from them, you know, being where they're at to like really excelling is that confidence. When I first started, I would go into listing presentations and I would just tell sellers, I can get your house sold and this is, you know, how I'm going to get it sold. And I didn't know that I could get it sold for sure, but I was going to tell them that I would, and I would make sure that I figured it out. And I did. I figured every one of them out, and I've gotten every property sold. But you know, there's agents on my team that would probably go into that listing presentation and say, you know, they think it'll sell, or they're not sure if it'll sell, or they might not even go into the listing presentation because they're not confident enough. There's so many agents that are not on my team that will come to me and they'll say, hey, I've got this buyer. He's an investor. You know, I don't really know how to run the numbers. So can I just refer it to you? And it'll be, you know, a $2 million deal. And, you know, and that's mind-blowing. That's great. Yeah. And it's great for me. Yeah. But everything that I learned about investing, now I've got a bunch of investment properties. But even when I first started, I had an investment condo where I rented the rooms, the extra rooms out to people. And I said, yeah, I'm an investor. I've got an investment property. But I also then would go and I would read. In my first year in real estate, I read 40 books on real estate, roundabout. And so if I didn't know, I would figure it out. And, you know, much like you said, there's, you know, faking it, you know, and then learning, or there's faking it and faking it. I would fake it and then I would learn. I would go to, you know, a showing and a client would ask me a question. And, you know, I have my go-to inspector. I'd ask him like, hey, what is this issue with this electrical box? And then, you know, I would tell them the answer, and, you know, and all of that has stuck with me. So I just figured it out as I've gone, but always spoken with confidence. And I think there's so many people that could benefit from doing that.
Oh, 100%. I mean, we tell our students all the time in our community, we're like, if you don't know, don't ever say you don't know. That is the worst thing that you can do. You can say, hey, you know what? Let me get with my team to figure out the best strategy. Let me discuss the best strategy. And then you're like, what the fuck? I don't know what they're doing. Like, and that's fine. And I tell the girls too, I'm like, you don't ever say you don't know something, because subconsciously that person is going to lose confidence that like, if you don't know, then how am I? You know what I mean? And so I think even when I'm hearing from you is that you just had the willingness to find the information, and that was the difference. And I think that's so key here, because most people aren't willing to have the tenacity to go after it because they feel like they have to know everything first before taking action. Do you see that a lot with your agents? Yeah.
You know, in the investing side, they talk about, you know, analysis paralysis, and it's very much the same with being an agent. There's so many agents on my team that are just too afraid to take the leap and just, you know, go out there and get more business, or they're afraid to cold call because they don't know the right things to say, when honestly just getting somebody on the phone is really all that matters if they're willing to talk to you. So, you know, just there's a lot of other little mistakes that people can make, but as you talked about, real estate is all percentages are made up. So I'm going to say 96% relationship based.
Good percentage. I like that number.
Great percentage.
96%.
Totally realistic.
And
you gotta be confident with it. Just say 96%.
Yeah, it is 96%. It's you know, that was in that study that we read.
Yeah.
And so, you know, if you're just getting somebody on the phone, this is, I believe, an actual stat from maybe NAR.
That didn't sound too confident.
Something like 90% of clients go with the first realtor they ever talk to.
Oh, wow.
So all you have to do is get in front of people first. And
then here's the other thing too, that even if that's the truth, like how many of them actually fall off because there was no follow-up? So even if you are the first, like with the leads, like when we talk about calling leads, like if you're cold calling, there could be so many people that they talk to, but then it dies there. And the people that follow up and that are consistent and stay in front of them, they're the ones that always win.
Yeah.
Like with the strongest follow-up.
Yeah. I tell my agents all the time because inevitably there are things that they could do better in a lot of different realms.
Yeah,
I just closed, and this is not a massive deal for Chicago, but I just closed a $600,000 listing. I believe Carlos was the attorney on it in North Aurora. Big house. He probably wouldn't know. He's got so much volume.
He's like, okay, yeah.
And, when I first started in real estate, I started late 2019 into early 2020. The clients were some of the first people that I ever met in early 2020. And I just closed their property maybe 2 months ago because I stayed in contact with them for 4 years, basically. And just every other month, every third month, I would say, hey, how are you doing? They asked me a couple of times throughout the process, hey, can you come over and just look at a couple of things? We're starting to look again at properties out of state, to finally move. And finally, by the 4-year mark, they finally moved.
But you didn't have to pay for the lead.
No.
You didn't have to do any of that. It was just conversations.
No, just having conversations consistently for 4 years and a couple of trips led to a $15,000 commission, and that's nothing to scoff at. And
no, not at all.
Yeah, I think, the mixture of the follow-up and just, again, acting like you know what you're doing even when you don't, but making sure you figure it out. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah, right. The follow-up. If you just hear fake it till you make it, please keep listening.
Yeah.
I'm interested to know what your background is because you've been doing it since 2019. What did you do before that?
So I was a behavioral analyst.
Okay, I felt like I opened a can of worms when you said that. You're like, okay.
So I worked with 2 to 6 year olds with autism for 6 years, and I ran a set of autism preschools in Australia. And so I oversaw the behavior plans, the early intervention plans, and I was author of about 70% of their curriculum. Once I got that program fully integrated, fully up and running, I left. I got my MBA in finance, and I wanted to work in the stock market. And I knew the math. I took very advanced math and statistics. And the more that I looked at real estate, the more that I realized that there are so many hidden numbers in real estate that aren't in the stock market. People try to compare your basic cash on cash number to the average return of the stock market since 1925. And they forget about principal pay down and appreciation, and not just appreciation, but leveraged appreciation. If you put down 20% on a $1 million property and it goes up 3%, that's $30,000 on a $200,000 investment. So that's 15% return on your money. So there was so much hidden value that I started to kind of gear myself more towards real estate, and eventually decided that I was going to do my own investing and, get into real estate. And as soon as I got my license, even just having listened to podcasts and read a bunch of books, I realized that most of the realtors around me couldn't run numbers for investors and had no idea what they were doing, and that there was a niche that I could really attack.
That is so awesome, especially because that gives your clients such a confidence because you already have that background. And then I'm sure being a behavior analyst helped you so much in being able to connect and read people and, intuitively understand how to connect with them.
Yeah. And having worked with, I don't have kids, but for anybody that does have kids, having worked with 2 to 6 year olds for as long as I did, I have so much patience.
I'm like, that's definitely patient.
So so it's been pretty easy to make it through even stressful real estate transactions.
Well, going back to you, Carlos. So when we talk about relationships, and then obviously you've worked with a lot of realtors. And so I really want this podcast to be geared towards, as the market shifts, we have to do things differently as realtors. And I think that a lot of them I know a lot of them have left the industry and are continuing to leave. So I think this is going to be super valuable if you are a realtor listening to this, hey, listen up, because we have people that Michael has not even been a part of the industry a long time, and yet he's number one for a reason. And so seeing so many realtors, can you tell us what comes top of mind of if they only knew this, that they could do so much better?
It's interesting because we were talking about this, just a little bit ago before we went on, the fact that, a lot of people that came in the last 3 or 4 years don't understand how to sustain the market after it, right? Yeah. They think they saw this wave, they jumped on, they had a ride, they bought the Beamer, they got the Louis bag, and now they're like, oh my God,
crap.
wait, I can't find a listing, I can't do this, or the market's not as hot anymore.
Yeah.
And that's just reality, right? It ebbs and flows. So one of the things that, and I tell this to a lot of my brokers, and it's not just because Mike is here, but, and I'm very serious about that, because you really, really need to understand what you're doing. It's not just, regardless of the state, Illinois has a lot of standard contracts. It's not just checking boxes, filling blanks, and smiling and how, being nice and this. You really, really got to understand what you're doing. And so I often tell some of my brokers, hey, reread the contract, take a look at it, understand things. A lot of my brokers that do multi-units don't understand having something called a certified rent roll, or understanding costs or expenses, 6 months of trailing, a history of, certain things. And Mike really understands the numbers more than most people. And I think that shows. And I think it's impressive when the client, whether it's a buyer or a seller, you can see it, right? As opposed to, it may or may not make me money. And so really just doing your homework. A lot of people just don't, understand what you're doing. This is your profession. As a lawyer, a lot of people come to me and, ask me questions like, do I have to check this box? Do I have to fill this box? And I'm like, you've been doing this for 10, 15 years.
Oh, my Lord.
The contract has changed in Illinois. The standard contract, the most used is the multi 7.0, but it's very user friendly, and it's created by attorneys and agents together, and it's done for a reason. And we still modify certain provisions to protect our clients, but just understanding what you're doing. And as far as like what I see out on the market, people, you have to hustle, you have to fight. You have to fight for every listing. You have to fight for every buyer. You have to understand how to make concessions. Just the other day, I had somebody fighting over $100. And, and people are trying to figure out like, whether we're going to close the deal over $100. And,
that always blows me.
And that's crazy. This is like, a $500,000 transaction. And I remember when my wife and I were getting married, I did 2 real estate closings that morning. And it was a 9 and 11.
Of course, did.
And I had to, my best friend was picking me up at my house at like 1. My very experienced broker forgot to put, and it's not, it happens, but he forgot to put that there was a fridge in the basement that was included. And so it was checked off or something. And so, but it was taken, and it was this big fight. And, he stepped up and he was like, hey, I'll give $500, my mistake. And the other attorney, I'm like, dude, I got to get to my wedding. So I literally took $100 out of my pocket. I'm like, he's giving you 5 years, 100 cash. Can we make it happen? And, it done. Yeah. Boom. So you really have to know how to pivot, how to adjust, and just like that, like just get it done. You have to hustle. They're not going to come to you like they were the last 2 or 3 years.
So your most successful brokers that you see that are always in your office, what is the characteristic that you see the most? Other than
Michael, and Michael knows this other agent who's consistently like top 5 in the United States, like a Latino broker, and just closes deals. He just, I don't know. I think he just, there's just a different mindset than other brokers. Mm-hmm. It's just like that, like, let's get it done, but he also understands the numbers, understands everything, understands the math, but it's like, let's get it done. How can we get it done? Great. Okay.
But that really is a mindset. Let's get it done instead of let me get in the way.
And I'm not, I'm not telling anybody how to work their money, but oftentimes, at least in Illinois, attorney fees like the lowest fee on the HUD, and I've seen him repeatedly, time and time, and that's just speaks to the amount of volume that he makes. Though probably is that he'll say, "Cool, we're fighting over $500. Reduce my commission $500. Let's go." Yeah. Because he understands volumes. He understands, let's get this out of the way. If I spend another month on this, that's going to be a bigger cost, right? Let me make sure the client has great experience, and I know that I'm going to have, maybe 2 or 3 leads off of that. Mm-hmm. And time and time again, I see that from him, and and I respect that, and I think it's a different mindset.
Mike, for your agents, what do you see for those agents that are most successful on your team?
Yeah, so
what stands out to you?
I think piggybacking off of Carlos, it's the aspect of hustle, and I'll kind of itemize that to an extent. And I'll start with a funny example here. So we were talking a little bit, off mic about a deal that I closed maybe a week and a half, 2 weeks ago for $3.58 million. Great closing. do you happen to know, you may not, the smallest deal that we currently have right now, it is $5,000.
Damn it, I told Selena stop accepting those. I'll talk to her later.
But I say yes to everything.
Yeah.
Because who knows what will come of it? You know, a random $5,000 listing might bring in some investor from California who's like, oh, I could do something with that. It's only $5,000. Like, you know,
more opportunities.
Every opportunity leads to more opportunities if you use it right.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that's just a funny example because we currently have that one right now. But we've got plenty of other ones, and we do plenty of higher ones as well. So working with them is great. It's not all low stuff. There's plenty of larger price short sales.
I'm just kidding.
But it's not just with you guys. It's with every aspect of my business. The reason that I've been able to build a team is because I've set up so many lead streams where I don't say no to basically anything. If somebody comes to me with a referral from any avenue, whether it's another EXP agent, whether it's a third-party referral-based lead generation source like your Opcities, like your Agent Prontos, I take all of those and we use them, and my team members work them. And so we've had to grow because they all come in and they turn into things. And, you know, not only do they turn into, you know, this $110,000 listing, which is great for my agent who's brand new and is charging 6% on that and taking 3.5% of the list side. So even though we're getting a split with them, they're still making a couple grand, and for them that's a lot of money.
Right.
But then all of a sudden, because it's lower price, it's bringing in investors, and then they start working with the investors on the buy side. I had investors that I worked with that, you know, are mutual clients of Carlos and I. Their very first property was about $110,000, about an hour away from my house. Couple years ago. And again, I've only been in the industry for a couple of years, but we're already 3 years down the line from when I did my first deal with them. And they just closed a $1.4 million commercial deal the same week that they closed a $900,000 3-unit. They're having me sell a $220,000 lot that they bought and were going to build on, but decided to pivot. And now they're going to be building 6 townhouses that they're going to have me sell individually. And so, you know, every yes that you give leads to something. And if you say so many yeses that you have so much business, then you can start to hand it off. And so the people that say yes to everything are the ones that end up doing the most amount of business, not just the small business that they're saying yes to no matter what, but they start to get bigger and bigger business.
But I think there's a whole other element that you're not even acknowledging, or maybe you don't even see. It's not even the fact that you said yes. It's the fact that you cultivated the relationship, and you weren't looking at the dollar amount, you were looking at the person.
Yep.
And so instead of saying like what a lot of agents say, that's not worth my time because it was only a $1,500 commission, you said, you know what, I got you. And because you had that mindset, they were like, Michael's our guy. I'm going to give him this opportunity. I'm going to give him this opportunity. So you took it a step further and now cultivated the relationship. And now you get so many opportunities from it. And I think so many realtors, just the way that they look at things, it's like so huge. Transactional.
Yes.
It's so transactional. And I was the same exact way, right? Like obviously like-minded. Like I would, when I first started and I was doing regular transactions, I would do rentals. And people, I mean, I didn't care because at the time I was just trying to, you know, get transactions. And I mean, I had the most lucrative relationships from someone that it was like $1,000 I think I made like net. And it was like I have this one person in mind that it was her mom and then dad. And then because they were separated, and then the brother, oh my God, he used me on 3 of the transactions. I mean, it was like the gift that kept on giving. And we probably did over 3 to 4 million of referrals. I didn't have to pay for. I didn't have to do anything. And they were like excited to work with me because I worked so hard for the mom initially just to help her out in that situation. And I cultivated that relationship. And so going to both of your points where it's like, hey, you've got to hustle and you've got to realize like bigger picture, it's a mindset. And the agents that are only like nitpicking because, oh, I'm focused on the 500,000 instead of that rental, they're out just as soon as they got in because they're transactional versus relationship.
What's crazy is that we have, you know, a lot of agents that we've had to find when we went nationwide. It was kind of a nightmare because we had to find agents in every state and title companies or attorneys in every state.
I was like, yes, let's do it in New Jersey.
Yeah. Nicole says yes to everything.
Indiana. Yes, well, because, you know, we just talked about the mindset.
Yeah, she's yes to everything.
And then I was like, oh, shit. We need an agent on our team.
So it was a lot, but Cheryl,
logistics. So
yeah, Cheryl in our office, she's the one that would find agents for us. And so so many agents were just like, no, I'm not taking this on. I don't want this
20 whole minutes from the house. And I used to tell them too, I'm like,
yeah.
if they literally tell you anything like about price or whatever, say no. Like, we're not working with them because like you said, you could have this, but then we'll give you all of our opportunities. So if you're willing to help us on the stuff that, it may be lower priced, you're going to get the ones that are 500,000, 400,000 or whatever.
I want to see something Mike said earlier is I remember when Mike came on real estate, and then all of a sudden I was working with him, and most agents, at least in Illinois, like you know your area. And I think that's a great thing, right? You're an expert in this area. You're expert in this neighborhood. Chicago's very kind of broken up, and their neighborhoods are their neighborhoods, right? And so Mike would be like, all right, we're going over here. And all of a sudden Mike's like in Rockford, then Mark's, which is like an hour north, and he's like an hour south, an hour west. He's over here, and it's $500,000, it's this. And it was just diversified, right? It wasn't just, this is my area. I don't go 10 minutes around, outside of my house kind of a thing. Mike's like, okay, I'll take it, right? And at the beginning, it was interesting working with Mike, but it's very combative sometimes. But it was, but I mean, you learn, right? You learn and you grow, and now it's just like, you know when to pick your fights. But talking about like, just kind of relationships, it's like Mike was everywhere, and then all of a sudden, I mean, that allowed him to grow, right? I mean, there's
now he can give it to his agents to be everywhere.
Yeah. Now, and then
that's the
that's
luxury
how you grow.
of it.
Yeah, that's the luxury of growing, right?
Yep. We paid our dues.
Yeah.
So we can outsource now.
Yeah, and I do feel like a lot of agents will tell you, these self-fulfilling limitations. And is there something to be said about really knowing a neighborhood? Yeah, of course. Like, there are the agents that we all know that, like, hey, this is their subdivision. They know everything about that subdivision. But there's agents that I've talked to that'll tell me like, oh no, I don't know anything about this town. And it's like 1 or 2 towns over. And when somebody would send me a referral an hour from my house, I wouldn't say no. I would say, yeah, I can do it. And then I would sit there and I would study every comp that sold for the last 2 years and just see like, oh, why is this like specific elementary school district more expensive than and by the time that I was ready to list that property, I knew what the value should be because I had done the studying, and it's not that hard. Which
is so true, because there's so many agents that are like, you're not doing the best for your client when you don't know the neighborhood, as if the internet does not exist and you can't do research.
Yeah.
Like, it blows my mind, because I see that a lot on the chats. And, if you're on YouTube, don't come for me, because keep listening, because I see them on these realtor chats, which I can't even stay on for very long because it's so like, go do business, because they're arguing. But they'll literally say like, what is wrong with you? Like, your fiduciary responsibility is to your client. And I'm like, yeah, I know. So that's why I'm going to make sure I know what the elementary is. So I make sure I know it. And I'll probably know it better price per square foot than you will. And you live in the neighborhood. Just living there or being in proximity doesn't make you the expert. Yeah. So it's crazy that people think that way. I'm like, this is not the 1980. Like, we don't have the old maps go. Like, it's okay. Like, Google is great if you're willing to do that. Yeah, our MLS, you can, and not every MLS is created equally. I'm a member of 3 different MLSs. Yeah. But honestly, the Chicago one is phenomenal. I can take in elementary school, I can take a high school, I can subcategorize every single area based on almost any criteria that I want. And I can take a town and I can take whatever amount of elementary schools that they've got. And within 5 minutes, I can have, if there's 7 elementary school districts, I can have view 7 CMAs that show you the average price in each elementary school district. I can show you the difference between towns, and that's all very easy to do. And I like to get even more granular than that, but I can give you that in 10 minutes. It's that easy using the power of our MLS. Yeah. And so if I spend an hour or 2 on it, looking through photos of every sold property on top of the CMAs and the raw data, there's almost nothing. I could probably talk to somebody who's been local in that area for 10 years and tell them 1 or 2 things that they don't know, because there's just so much available information. And then somebody will come in and tell me, oh yeah, you don't know that the Hendersons sold this house for $20,000 less because they sold it to their friend. And I'm like, all right, sure, great. But like the overall data is going to win out. Not a comp. Yeah. So it's okay. It'll just stay a secret. Yeah. How did you guys meet? You guys said through college?
Yeah. So Mike started, and it was very, very brief because Mike started a rugby team at our college. And so I was a commuter. I lived in Chicago. I was working for the Chicago Police Department as a civilian, and I was going back and forth twice a week. And I was in there, and I was like, this is great because I was an athlete my whole life, and I'm like, I need something to keep going. And so Mike brought it up, and on the campus, and I was like, cool, I want to get involved.
Yeah.
And I did some stuff, and it was growing, and Mike was like out there trying to get like different schools and buses and money and this, and I was like,
so the hustle aspect.
I was like,
has
wow,
always been a thing.
I'm like, this is great. I'd love to do that, but I was like torn between like I have to, I work for the Chicago Police Department. I get, as a civilian, not as a police officer,
Yeah.
and then I'm commuting over here. Like I had to figure out what I had to do, so I kind of stepped back. Probably within like 3 months, and then just Mike was on Facebook, my Facebook from college, and you would see things they would do. He played in it was in New Zealand or wherever
in Australia.
Yep. He played rugby, and I'm like, wow, this is cool. Like he took it on, and like he kept going, right? And then and like I said, then when he posted like, hey, I got my broker's license, I'm like, all I did was shoot, and I do this every so often. I try not to do it with friends because I'll shoot up a message just like through Facebook or whatever, or a text and say, hey, FYI, if you need a real estate attorney, happy to help out. I give, a friend discount or something, just, let me know. Cause mine's volume based as well as an attorney, right? I'm able to close like 500 plus residential real estate transactions because brokers like Mike bring them to my office, and they know I'm, I hope they I'm a good attorney, and my team, shout out to Yami, my paralegal, who does it all. And, and so it's volume based. So every once in a while I drop a line through somebody, and I did it with Mike, and I'm like, maybe he'll be like, yeah, forgot who you are, don't know you. Or,
I forgot who you are.
and like, it's been like 15 years. I'm like, I don't know. And then, it was just, it wasn't a very long duration that we touched base in college. And, and Mike was like, yeah, let's do it. And I did Mike's, his first personal transaction, the one that he said and I remember talking to him and being like, yeah, I'm going to lease out the other 2 rooms. I'm like, well, that's kind of weird. I'm like, that's kind of weird.
He's like, I'm an investor.
Yeah. He's like, I'm an investor. I'm like, what do you have? He goes, I have a condo now with 2 units. Exactly the way you said it, actually, is the way you said it. And it was like a 4-hour closing because the title company's power outage went out.
Oh, no.
And we were sitting there. I remember it.
This business is never boring.
Oh, so that deal, my first ever deal, this is a quick side note, didn't fund for 4 days, actually, because they sent a wire to a non-existent account that had been shut down.
It's like, you have one job.
And it's funny because when Carlos did reach out, again, fake it till you make it. Like he's like, hey, if you need a real estate attorney, and I probably responded like, yeah, that'd be great. And in my head, I'm like, I didn't know I needed one. That's so good.
Good looking out.
So you did about 500 transactions last year.
Yeah, maybe a little more. I think the year before that, like around 600. And then this year, I think Yami had said we're like 448 or 468 to date.
Wow. So
That's
4 years.
just residential.
And then how long have you been doing this?
12.
In real estate? In 12.
So when I was in government, I was kind of doing one-offs, helping people, friends. So not
like have the business.
Yeah. So I mean, I had a business. I mean, I had my law firm on the side. I was helping people. I had business clients doing non-real estate stuff. If somebody had a closing, I'd be like, hey, I'm happy to help. But if not, I don't care. I'm just here. And then I would say 2016 is when I really was like, all right, I started kind of taking off. And all of a sudden I'm like, okay, this is a lot. Like I'm doing a high volume, and I really need to and I would say back in 2016, I was probably closing like 180 and 200. And I'm like, all right, this is great. And prior to that, I think total probably matched like 250, 300, right? So these last few years, it's just been crazy as far as residential.
And as far as your growth.
Yeah, as far as the growth. And then when it was funny, and because you kind of know when you make it, I was at my kids we met some other parents with similar aged kids, and we went to their house on the other side of my town where I moved to in the western suburbs, and we're there, and it was barbecue this past summer, and all of a sudden the host was like, hey, I want you to meet my buddy. He's a real estate attorney. I'm like, hey, what's going on? How are you, man? Carlos Aparicio. And he's like, whoa, Aparicio Law. Dude, like, we've done a bunch of transactions together. I know you. There was another attorney who I'd worked for in the past. And he's like, you're mean. I'm like, okay, that's great. I'm like, I threatened to sue you, didn't I? He's like, yeah. I'm like, okay, good.
Well, we're good here now.
Yeah, we're good now.
That's fine. Well, the reason why I asked is because I want, but I know as we wrap this up, I'd love for you guys to leave the people that are watching, like if you had to start all over right now you're like, hey, I want to start doing it and start getting clients, getting into the business. What would you start with so that you could start getting business? Like, what would be your starting point? Because I know there are a lot of people that are either starting to get in the business, struggling to stay in the business. So I think that would be like outside looking in perspective. If I had to start all over, I lost everything, what would I do? Knowing what you know now.
Yes, knowing what I know now, I would hire an admin immediately. And then, even though that sounds crazy, you have no deals, but and along with that, I would also start to gain team members as soon as I even had a semblance of volume. But what that'll allow you to do is focus on things that make you money. I was so afraid to delegate for the first year and a half that I was in real estate. Yeah. And even when we started the team, Jake, my partner, and I would get leads and I would say, oh no, maybe we should keep that one. Maybe we should keep, and now it's like, just send it out into the universe. It'll come back in a couple of months with, and we'll make half on it. So, I think that there's so much value in focusing on what you do, and what I do very, very well, on top of hopefully more than just this, is find leads, find investors, find people that want to, buy property, invest in property, and all of the stuff that goes in that niche. And if I'm focused on things that aren't that, it's taking away money that I could be making. So having somebody who can do the paperwork, having people that can work, leads that I find while I'm looking for exactly what I'm looking for that don't exactly fit what I want to work with, that will just make your business grow so much more. As soon as we got an admin and as soon as we started putting team members in place and stopping working all of the deals ourselves, we went from 3 team members for the first, 4, 5, 6 months to whatever it is, 26. I have to recount something like 26 agents within the span of like a year. And it just took off very fast.
Well, so all I'm hearing is you would have focused on the income producing activities.
Yes.
And then everything else, you would have been like, here you go. Because that way, because obviously what you're good at is building relationships and your pipeline. And so your focus on that is what's helped you expand, because you don't need to do transaction coordinating and, respond with all the paperwork. Totally agree with that. How about you? If you had to start all over knowing what you know now, what would you do?
I guess 2 things is, one, assemble a team quicker. I had, like independent contractor assistants that I would pay. It's really difficult because you have to teach somebody, right? You have to manage somebody, you have to teach somebody. Like Mike, I was kind of afraid to delegate certain things. And, I was fortunate enough that I had, I went through 3, and Yami, who I give a lot of credit to, like, just, I hired her. My wife, who's a global HR director, was like, let me take the wheel. And she like found her and, sourced her and interviewed. And, we had a bunch of candidates. I wanted to go with a ton of other people. And I was like,
shout out.
I was like, I can't. I can't pronounce her name. I don't want to hire her. I'm like, Yamaleth. And then she was just like, Yami for short. I'm like, I can do that. And so, but she's like the core and the backbone of my team. So to see that, I would have done it earlier, because I think sometimes, like, I was doing 150, 180 transactions on my own, in addition to other areas of law that I practice.
It's crazy.
And real estate, high volume, everyone's like, what's going on? What's going on with my deal? Realtors, everybody, mortgage lenders, everybody wants to talk to you. Mm-hmm. So between 9 to 5, I couldn't get almost any other type of legal work done. Right. It had to be like after hours, right? Which is fine. I didn't have kids at that time. And so I think 1 is start a team. And I think 2 is social media, which I'm not talking about TikToks or anything like that. I don't do TikToks or anything, but
now we're going to make you dance.
I'm a dancer. And this is a shout out to my wife, right? Because the 2 most people I call are my wife and my paralegal. Like, that's, my phone's just like one or the other. And so she was like, let me start your social media. And I was
really
like,
all I'm
cool.
hearing is that everyone needs someone like your wife.
My wife, yeah. But it's literally like my Yami is like at work, like she's everything. She does everything, she handles everything. And then my wife's like, let me take, she was like, let me take the HR perspective, because I was doing it. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. And then she took it, she got her on board. And then she's like, we need social media. And then my wife's like, let me take it. And she did. And not so much for the real estate a portion of it, but it helps people like seeing it. Like people
They want
like,
the validity.
I Googled you and you have 114 5 stars. And they're like, okay, but just a little. And so
And he knows exact number,
and so-
114.
You check before you came.
Yes, I'm on it. And so people will literally look, and before they're like, well, I don't even see you on Google. And I'm like, well, I'm an attorney. Why do I need to be on Google? And mind you, I'm like a week away from turning 38 years old. So I'm not that old, but I'm just kind of like that.
No, it's really honestly like your resume at this point.
It
And
is.
the people that don't understand that, like, they just don't see it, because right now, just like as a consumer, if you're going somewhere, you're always Googling first.
Yes.
And you want to see other people's experience. And if you don't have that, you don't have to be a TikTok star. You don't have to have be an influencer, but you have to have a presence.
Yeah.
People have to know
And I didn't know that. And so you're saying like, I think if I, and like we just got my website kind of updated, because I had done it on my own. I was so proud. It looked like it was from like 1999. And so it was really, really bad. My wife's like, this is bad. I'm like, this is great. Until I started looking at other attorneys. I'm like,
Next time, bring your
wow.
wife.
I'm like, wow.
With the podcast.
Yeah, you got to ask your wife.
That's hilarious. All right. Any other questions you want to ask, Steph, while we have them here?
I think y'all answered all of them. I'm just so glad y'all came all the way from Illinois.
Yes, thank you so much for visiting us. We had such a great time.
Yeah.
And if you guys have any questions, we'll put their contact information so you can be like 115 on Google for them. And then, of course, connect with Michael. And if you have any questions or comments, leave it in the comments below, and we'll see you guys next time.